Across the Donkey Kong franchise, DK has multiple allies to help him and the Kongs go up against whatever the threat is for that game. These animal buddies make for a fun change of pace, allowing players to swap out of their original routine as controlling a Kong to a completely different creature with a different set of abilities. Some of the familiar faces over the years have been Rambi, Enguarde, Squawks, Espresso, and plenty more. Something that has always surprised me about Donkey Kong 64 is the lack of animal buddies. Well, not necessarily the lack of, but over the years, I haven't been able to ignore the fact that Rambi is only seen twice, and Enguarde once. Furthermore, the buddies can only be accessed by DK and Winky. Being locked to a specific Kong is one thing, but it's the fact that 3 other Kongs have no other buddies to play as. And I simply can't think of a reason why. These buddies are so fun to play as. Why not make it perfectly aligned and give all 5 Kongs a buddy? Rambi and Enguarde are both designed for rather specific moments of the game. Jungle Japes being the first world, players are restricted to what they can do with only DK and Diddy. It makes a lot of sense for Rambi to lend a hand and bash through some walls and huts. And as for Enguarde, he comes in when he's needed most. Having a swift and efficient character to dive around Gloomy Galleon truly helps make the experience less gloomy. If there was an animal buddy available to each world, it would be interesting and kind of amazing. Potentially unrealistic if they're trying to lock buddies to specific Kongs, but there's a ton of options out there, so I'd like to go through the buddies available to us from other titles and see what makes a great fit for certain Kongs or worlds. Squawks the Parrot is the first ally that immediately comes to mind, probably because we see this buddy from the very beginning of the game and throughout the adventure. I'd personally love to get help from Squawks in Crystal Caves. I talk about this in the review video, but this is a difficult world to navigate. The collapsing rocks tend to create frustration and cause players to fall off the ledge, then struggle to regroup. The world has a confusing layout, and it's awfully dark to even see past a certain point. More times than not, I've had to depend on Diddy's jetpack to bop around, which is frustrating to waste through coconut resources. So all of this to say, I'd love to have an ally that can provide faster and easier transportation. Maybe not the most solidified purpose to a buddy. It's not like Rambi taking down walls or Enguarde opening up doors. But the same could be applied to make him more practical. Diddy Kong has one of those DK stars to fly through to allow access into the igloo. Giving the responsibility to Squawks would then make him more practical as a buddy and opens the door to flying around wherever we need. A win-win. Rattly the Rattlesnake is another buddy that comes to mind, and one that can make a great fit for Fungi Forest. With some snakes in the real world being poisonous, it could be fun to maneuver through the poisonous vines as Rattly. As a character designed to help Kongs bounce around, it would be incredibly helpful to have an ally bop around something that originally rings fatigue, like the Mushroom Building. Instead of the canna set up to shoot players to the top, there could be a path of poison vines only accessible to Rattly. Some of the golden bananas and other collectibles in this section may become more entertaining and memorable, and hopefully less of a chore. Winky the Frog also came to mind with essentially the exact same concept, jumping around to higher places. But it would be a little silly to have 2 allies with the exact same purpose. And it's tough to think of a different world more fitting to a frog besides the obvious Jungle Japes or Fungi Forest. Sorry, Winky. Ellie the Elephant would be another great addition to the ally team. I think she and Tiny would make a great pairing, what with them being such opposites in size. I can also see Angry Aztec being an opportunity world to play as Ellie. There are plenty of opportunities where Tiny shrinks down to pass through a hole in the wall. There could be a whole closed-off section just for Ellie to solve a barrel puzzle or blast some baddies with water. Given how many bonus stage barrels are in the game, and aiming a weapon in 3D was such a large selling point of the generation, there could be a section dedicated to aiming Ellie's trunk like a scope and blasting away at enemies. On to the next animal buddy. Squitter the Spider would be a lovely addition to the team. I would love to see him and Chunky Kong being paired together, continuing that opposite comparison in sizes. I can also see Squitter being helpful in a world like Frantic Factory, also being the world to introduce Chunky. To have an ally shoot webs for both defeating enemies and, more importantly, accessing new areas is huge. Frantic Factory is a world with large and tall rooms. How neat it would be to climb to the tippy top of the production room while knocking out baddies along the way, or creating a challenge that's beyond the glass window in the testing room. Perhaps going all the way to the moon. I don't know, Frantic Factory is a pretty beastie world. What might help the players navigate the world is having more of a bird's eye view, and maybe crawling through itty-bitty spaces for easy access from one room to another. Espresso the Ostrich is the next ally to bring onto the team, a useful buddy for speed and flight. While I can't think of a Kong to pair him with or what world is most appropriate, I kinda like the idea of replacing the Kongs for the two Beetle races with Espresso. Both races are notorious for being excruciatingly hard. It would be handy to have a character built for speed, could easily soar over some of these nasty drop-offs, and if designed like Donkey Kong Country, could run over the Beetle to avoid losing coins. Just these basic designs of Espresso could ease the pressure in completing this race. In my years of playing this game, both races are golden bananas I tend to want to avoid. But that especially goes for the second race in Crystal Caves. Something about these massive jumps I simply can't nail anymore. So I'd love to have the option to just fly right over these gaps. Well, not fly, but quick and easy gliding. I think that's about all there is to adding an animal buddy to Donkey Kong 64, without being too repetitive of some of the other previous allies. Now, I nearly considered some of the buddies from newer games, until it finally registered in my brain that they wouldn't have been a thought during the time it was developed. But what are your thoughts on the buddies I've mentioned? Do you see a better fit for them in a different world? Or a different buddy outside of the ones I mentioned? There's a lot of different ways to add them. I'll always wonder why Rare only gave us 2 animal buddies to use. Not sure if it's our hardware limitation, lack of time, bugs, who knows. But I know we would have welcomed more. Let me know your thoughts below, and see you next time.